right, Jesse, let's talk about money, equity, saving money, making money. What are some of the basics people can expect when they act as their own contractor?
Well, I think a lot of it starts with the size of the home, but depending on the size of the project, there are substantial savings in the fees that are saved by acting as your own contractor with our owner-builder model. So those fees can be substantial, up to $150,000, depending on the size of the project.
I mean, if you were going to go in a traditional direction.
That's right.
Compared to traditional.
With a turnkey general contractor, we see those fees being quite a bit more. So you're going to save on average of $100,000 to $150,000 with HomeWrights as an owner-builder.
Yeah, and it really depends on the size of the home, of course, and how much time.
Yes, it does. Yeah, and that time component is a factor. I think we're averaging 11 months probably on our builds for the average home. Some are quite a bit bigger, and they take a couple months more to finish. But
and how does that compare to a turnkey traditional contractor, timing-wise? Any difference?
There may be some. I'd have to ask around, but I'd say that there's sometimes some delays with not staying on track with your schedule, and that slips and delays happen, and then you lose a month or 2 weeks, depending.
But the reality is, I would think that if you are committed to getting this done and you see this as your job for a period of time, you could move this along quicker because you're making decisions on the spot, on site, as needed.
Yes, and I think when we show people the sequence that we've come up with, that we create for their project, specific to their project, they see that the timeline brings them to a point where they should be finishing this job and this project and turning the key and moving in, So that is a motivator in itself, I think, because it keeps the awareness there front and center, that I can always say, we need to be doing X on this week, so we better make sure it happens.
Yeah.
So,
and when things get delayed or stalled, you also, as the project coordinator, spot those things and point those things out?
Yeah, we do. We try to identify what brought us to that point, obviously, and how we can improve on that and not let that happen again for any other phases of the project. But typically there's some obvious reason, and then we just figure that out and move forward, adjust our next plan and communicate those next start dates to the ones after.
But bottom line, as the owner-builder, I can build some equity much quicker than using a turnkey approach, right?
That's right. Yeah, and I believe that's right back to the the overall expenditures of the project when it comes to the fees and what they had to put into it. It is like a part-time job for the client, but it's something I think they enjoy. They can, push pause on it and go back to family or business stuff and come back, and that's where we play a role as well. If there's an inspection that needs an attendee, then we will be that person to come in while someone has a graduation to attend or something like that. Yeah, so it happens.
Now, I've heard different numbers from different people all the time about how many hours per week I should plan on. I suppose that's a little subjective too. I can put in as much or as little as I want. What are the general guidelines about expectations for my weekly commitment to this kind of a project?
I would always tell people to expect about 15 to 20 hours every week. And that can be broken up between each day, a couple hours here or there, and a considerable amount probably on Sunday afternoon or morning as you plan out the week and send out emails updating people, etc.
How do you finance a project like this?
Typically, we like to refer people to a Colorado lender, a bank that is familiar with the neighborhood, the area, and knowing the risk component and the value of that neighborhood, the potential there.
So, Jesse, if I thought I would just walk into my own local bank and tell them I've never done this before, but I want to build my own custom home, what do you think they would say?
Well, I think they might tell you to call HomeWrights, and we've had people do that in the past where they rely on us to provide some documentation. Oftentimes we will put together a letter that states the intentions of the relationship and that we will be supporting the project as a experienced licensed builder.
Because the bank doesn't want the risk, and they also want you to succeed.
That's right. Yeah. Oftentimes that's just not their bread and butter or their desire to service a loan like that. So that again is where we guide people to the right bankers to start. Another thing to talk about is the awareness that each one of us in HomeWrights as project consultants bring to the table when it comes to seeing things that may be of value in savings, selections of materials, Or when it comes to saying, hey, that material is expensive, but if that's what you want, then let's do that and look for other areas to bring back some of those costs in our favor. I can't count how many times each project, but a good few times each project, we have an opportunity to do something with the design or with an element of the exterior landscaping, for example, to keep control of costs and do something fun and creative, and hit a nice point with the client to where they're happy with it and didn't hemorrhage too much more money doing it.
Yeah, hemorrhage money. That's not a pretty sight.
No, never want that for anyone.
So let's talk about one of the things that typically happens is scope creep. People start out on a project and all of a sudden they say, well, we really want to do this versus that, and it's going to cost more money. How do you help people that get great ideas as they go along that will cost more money?
Well, that's a great example of what we're talking about with these weekly meetings, and seeing perhaps an install guide for that item they're wanting to pick and choose, letting them know that if they do that, it's going to require maybe 3 or 4 different subs to accomplish it. And where does the electrician come into play for a steam shower, for example, or the expense of getting materials to do the ceiling in that steam shower. And so it does have, again, all those strings attached to it that keep the numbers going one way or another. So I think just being smart about that conversation and letting people know that if that's what they really want, here's all the implications to the rest of those costs that might come along with it.
So you give people a dose of reality and keep them out of trouble at the same time?
Yes, we do. We try to give that, applaud from the side saying, I love this idea, but it's going to cost this, and it's going to require our time frame to step back or be rearranged because of something that we need to do in preparation for that.
And so contrast that with what a typical contracting firm or a general contractor would say in that situation.
They would probably not give that opportunity. They would probably say, keep going, because it obviously is something where the costs continue to add up on their fee side. Home Wrights with the owner builder is a transparent, one-time agreed upon fee to support the project and help run it through to the end.
Oh, so you make no more money if I decide I want to add diamonds to my chandelier, it doesn't make any difference to you.
That's right. No, we just want to make sure.
Typical builders marking everything up, correct?
That's right. Yeah, it's just typically on a cost plus basis, and those percentages are intact and they stay. We agree upon a fee. Typically it is a percentage you could derive from, but we honor that and don't continue to pile on, so to speak, if you chose a very expensive chandelier for the dining room.
So I can do whatever I want. You just pointed out that it will cost me more, and it doesn't make any difference to your bottom line.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that helps the client feel confident in those decisions, and knowing that there's not another thing that's going to get slipped in when the scope of work does creep one direction or the other.
And you also know the personality and the situation of the client going into this. So you're looking out for them. It's to your benefit to make it work for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes full circle when we do our project forecasting for the costs, and know that we've got someone who is dreaming away at some very fine finishes, cabinetry, for example, appliances that are going to come into play. And that gives us a sense of where those other things will kind of end up being too when it comes to those expected costs.
Cool. So bottom line it for me. Tell me what the meaning of transparency is. You've used that term quite a bit here.
Transparency for me, and I think for the rest of us at Home Wrights, is just being upfront and honest, educating people to let them see what it will be when they do a certain thing or design a certain way. Then also just being transparent with our costs, like I said, with regard to a one-time fee that we agree upon, and that fee does not change unless the increase of square footage changed, and then that would be where our fee had originated. But all in all, there would be something that someone could rely on. The confidence level, trustworthiness, I think, is a big deal to us, and we want to make sure our reputation is such that people come to us knowing that they're going to get that, and that's the bottom line.